Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics, our last edition of the year with the Christmas pocket square and everything else. There's been such a crazy year. We have a full opinion maker panel starting with former State Senator Jeff Smith. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Brittany Robins, congratulations on the nuptials.
Thank you.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you.
Jane Dueker, friend of the show, welcome back. Good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Scott Dieckhaus, let me just ask a question. 2018, it's a good year to be Scott Dieckhaus.
It wasn't a bad year.
Floor leaders, a governor, a lengthy list of clients. You had such a good year, we had to have 3 Democrats on just to balance it out.
I appreciate that. I'll take my beatings here at the end of the year.
If only we could get this ratio in the legislature.
Well, this guy's been working so you couldn't. But let's talk about something that is a problem for Republicans, and that is an investigation that has been launched. Look, these things get filed all the time. These interest groups file stuff against guys like Josh Hawley. It always seems to come around when you're running for higher office, you get more scrutiny. However, this time the Republican Secretary of State picked up the investigation, looking into this. It's a unique situation that really didn't exist under Nixon and not really under Koster, where some out-of-state consultants were involved. And the question is, did they direct some Missourians in the AG's office, and is that illegal? I think this is one of those nagging things that you just, I'm sure Josh Hawley wants to talk about where the cloakroom is in the Senate, but he can't quite get there.
No, he can't quite get there. You're right. The Kansas City Star did an investigation just before the election, and they showed, and they had a lot of documentation for this, emails and other things, that Josh Hawley's East Coast political consultants had actually been directing his official staff since literally 10 days from the time he was sworn into office. So this was not something that just happened once he ran for U.S. Senate. It had been happening his entire time as Attorney General. Official state staff people are not allowed to be doing politics on the people's time, and that's something that put Bill Webster in jail nearly 30 years ago, and we'll see where this investigation leads, but it doesn't smell good.
Brittany Robins, I think this started off, it is a time-honored tradition in the fall, right? The Cardinals make the playoffs, and the Star and the Post attack whatever Republicans at the top of the ticket with some innocuous thing. Jay Ashcroft taking it up actually added some credibility to it.
Sure, I think this is definitely a story that has legs, and it's still unfolding, and we're still seeing what all is there. But anytime you have a Republican investigating a Republican, it should be taken seriously, just like these allegations.
Jay, and they actually reached out to Nicole Galloway, which look, Josh Hawley made a point that some of these investigations should have subpoena power and the ability to compel witnesses. He advocated that earlier this year when he was defending the state. Now, Jay Ashcroft reached out to Nicole Galloway. I have to admit, when this first came up, I was like, oh, surprise, surprise. The leaves are changing. The Star and the Post attack the Republican nominee. It's normal. However, you have to give some credence. When Jay Ashcroft decides, I'm sure this is the most popular thing he could do, takes it on, it's interesting.
I think it's actually a pretty interesting move by him, because by bringing in the auditor, who's a Democrat, if something happens that he doesn't like, he can blame the Democrat. If it's in his political best interest and something happens that would actually advance him, then he can pick up the ball and run with it. So he does put himself in a better position and has more leverage by bringing in a Democrat, because then he can distance himself anytime he feels like it, or he can pick up and run with it if he wants to. I think it's kind of a power move by Jay Ashcroft against his own people. So maybe he wanted that appointment and didn't get it.
Let me say, when there was a time earlier this year, in 2018, when Josh Hawley was defending the state of Missouri against some East Coast shysters. Now, at that time, Jay Ashcroft wasn't exactly mistaken for William Wallace about defending Missouri, but now...
He was very quiet during the whole Greitens thing, which I thought was interesting.
Which Josh Hawley was not.
And was not. And so that's what I think makes this sort of a power move, is he decided when he was coming into the fray, and this is a very interesting thing. And I think not only did you have East Coast, consultants, they were directing policies. So policies were being based on politics. That is the quintessential using public resource and using your position for political gain. They were making sure that what he was doing was advancing, they were making sure he was advancing his political career as opposed to doing the work of the people of Missouri. I think it's a serious allegation. There were the same allegations we had when he was at the University of Missouri. This might be a pattern. So I think it's a good move on Ashcroft's part.
Yeah, because I roll, but Jay Ashcroft is a fundamentally honest person. I mean, you're not going to find a straighter shooter.
He is, and I think, what this boils down to, once you kind of take all the partisan stuff out of it, is you've got a left-leaning organization filed a complaint with the Secretary of State's office. He's doing his due diligence. He's taking any complaint that comes his way seriously. He's going through the process of doing an investigation. He called in Nicole Galloway's office because they were already in the process of doing an audit of his office at the end of the year, and basically said, hey, if you see anything that smells funny or whatever, let me know because I've got this going on. And I think everything else is blown out of proportion.
Jane Dueker, one thing that I don't think you really can honestly blow out of proportion, Claire McCaskill this week said she's not running for anything again. She's out.
Yeah.
I have to think that even the most confident person in the Parson administration was exhaled with a little bit of a sigh of relief. She would have been the top candidate Democrats could have fielded to run for governor. She steps aside. This is sort of a different time when you have Jay Nixon not running and you have Claire McCaskill not running. Those are two giants in the Democratic Party.
Well, it's kind of
for
the
a
end of the
lifetime.
generation,
Yeah.
really. I mean, when you look at all the contemporaries, Roger Wilson, Bob Holden, Claire McCaskill, all of them. So yeah, this is sort of a changing of the guard, and I do think I applaud her for doing that because I think there was a lot of chatter whether she was going to get in, and I think putting it down and just saying, look, this is not going to happen allows Democrats to get it together and decide what the next step is going to be. And so she'll be around. She's a formidable campaigner. So
yes.
Nobody wants to raise the kind of money you have to run against Claire McCaskill. So that probably is a sigh of relief for Republicans.
Brittany Robins, I mean, people can look at Claire McCaskill, argue about the different debater decisions, debater motivations, but I think at the end of the day, an honest assessment has to be she cared about the state of Missouri. She did put the state first at every turn, took a lot of heat, even her family took heat. You almost say congratulations, hope you enjoy your holidays. She's a person that's earned the right to go off, frankly respected by any fair-minded Missourian.
Sure, she definitely loved the state of Missouri, loves the state of Missouri. There's no doubt about that. You can never question that or her leadership or her dedication to the policies she tried to put in place in the state. But to kind of echo what Jane said, yes, congratulations to her to be able to sort of step back and take a breath. But I hope we do get to see her again because we do need her continue to work in the state. There's a lot that she left on the table, on the field that she could still help with. There's plenty to be done.
And she will. And I think it'll be great. And I think she'll mentor people, and I think she'll be great.
Jeff Smith is somebody that you know. I mean, she didn't always speak the most progressive liberal talk, but she was probably somebody that advanced liberal cause in the state as much as anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was about as progressive as you could be and survive in Missouri politics as a Democrat during the time that she did. So, I think Jane said it well. We had a generation of leaders, and we need to turn the page and have a new generation of leaders. Obviously, Jason Kander ran a fantastic campaign in 2016. I think he's doing better.
Well, there's a whole group like McCaskill people. Like the first one that comes to mind is Greg Razor in Kansas City. That's a person I think of that worked out of the McCaskill point. I think Stephen Weber would count himself in that McCaskill tree of different people. I mean, she leaves a legacy of a lot of people to come behind and turn that page too.
Sure, and don't count out Russ Carnahan. He's throwing his name in the mix as well.
Now, Scott Dieckhaus, you're somebody that is working. With Governor Parson, correct? You're affiliated with organizations that support Governor Parson, at least. I have to think when you start to look ahead, which everyone does naturally, to 2020, the top name would have been Claire McCaskill.
Without a doubt. I mean, as far as Democrats that are left in play, she has a tremendous ability to raise money, to connect to Missourians that other Democrats have had a hard time connecting with. She kind of learned how to speak rural Missouri in some ways. She kind of, she forgot about Southeast Missouri a little bit this year and kind of kicked them a little bit. But
well, we're forgiven, folks. I will say this, that there is a legacy of those town halls. I went to one of them in Poplar Bluff during the height of the Obamacare thing. She took a grilling for an hour and a half. It was an admirable thing.
It is admirable.
I went to one in St. Louis, and the guy that was pulling the questions, no one would have pulled those questions. I was actually impressed with her ability to take questions on her feet. It was you could tell she knew the issues.
You don't go from the state legislature to statewide office to to prosecutor, and then to be a U.S. senator without being a very talented individual and somebody who's capable of all of the different components of campaigns, and that's talking to voters and raising money and understanding the issues and speaking on the issues. And she's done a phenomenal job.
Let's go from a reasonable, measured discussion about Claire McCaskill's legacy to some Republicans saying that the new chair of the Missouri Democratic Party, Jackson County Prosecutor Gene Peters Baker, can't be the elected Democrat prosecutor and chair of the state party. Give me the logic behind behind the complaint?
I don't have any issue with so I'm not really going to defend it. I mean, I think what it boils down to is you're in a hyper-partisan atmosphere, and Republicans and Democrats are both guilty of this, but you kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And I think it was just one of those moments. They kind of flung it at the wall to see if they could get a story out of it, and they got a story. They got a little bit of buzz.
Brittany,
But
was
really,
it a bridge too far? Does that make the next complaint look a little illegitimate after that one?
Sure. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around the absurdness of this argument. It's no secret that Jean Peters Baker is a Democrat. And that should not bar anyone in being in elected office and running a state party, whether you're Republican or Democrat, and it's just that simple. And Republicans should be careful.
I agree with Brittany. I mean, people's backgrounds. If we're going to get into people's backgrounds, precluding them from serving a party or serving a cause, I mean, it just gets nitpicky. So I think you're spot on.
She's one of the most ethical people
Yes.
I know. And so to accuse her of that she would let party activities interfere with her job, she would have already done that if she was going to do it. She is not that kind of person. And I mean, when the chair of the Republican Party is on the transition team for the new Attorney General, you need to step out of your glass house on that one. So I think that was a misstep. I think it was a whiff. I think that she's hard to assail because she's a good public servant. And
she was a good pick, I thought.
And she is a great pick.
Yeah.
And so I think they sort of ran out of lane on that.
She's got a big job ahead of her.
Yes.
Oh my God! I mean,
Yes.
I have to say though, Stephen Weber fought a good fight. He poured himself into that job for 2 years. He traveled the state. It's just a hard job, isn't it?
I got exhausted looking at Stephen Weber's Twitter feed
Right.
last year. I mean, he was in
everywhere.
Benton County, he was in Polk County, he was in Grundy County. I mean, he was,
places.
speaking to, a dozen people in their 70s, in counties where, sadly, the party infrastructure had really eroded over the course of the last 15 years. And Stephen did yeoman's work in trying to rebuild that. And I'm hopeful that our party can begin to kind of capitalize on a little bit of that over the next few cycles.
He planted a lot of seeds that I don't
He
think
did.
people see on the outside.
He did.
And that infrastructure was gone, and he was rebuilding.
What does he do?
Well,
Or she do? I'm sorry, to actually go to Worth County and convince them to maybe give up some of their guns or change their views on abortion or deprioritize. What do you do? Do you say these issues don't matter that much? How do you?
I think that's one of the challenges of working at the state party, particularly at the Democratic Party. I was there in 2011 and 2012, and you sort of alluded to this earlier when we were talking about Senator McCaskill. Being a Democrat in Missouri isn't as cut and dry as it is in some other states. Especially depending on which region you're in. So it's really striking a balance and being able to speak to Democrats in Southeast Missouri and then go into St. Louis and be able to speak to Democrats there. But regardless, state parties are challenges, I think, whichever one you are at. However, yes, Jean Peters Baker does have her work cut out for her.
You see her at the Christmas party, and she says, how do I go to McDonald County and convince them to vote Democrat? What do you say?
Well, look across the country, and you've seen red states across the country just a month ago that voted overwhelmingly for Trump and for Republican congressional candidates also support expanding the Medicaid program, something that the state Democratic Party has been trying to do for years.
Yeah.
You saw the vote on right to work, the overwhelming vote against that. So, I mean, there are a lot of issues, medical marijuana legalization, where Democrats have lined up in favor of positions that 60% or more of Missourians support. It's a matter of rebranding the party and making sure, I hate to say this, but that Missouri Democrats don't get tarred with some of the excesses of the more liberal National Democratic Party.
Speaking of that, speaking of that outstate Missouri, let's talk about Iron County. We'll be right back. We'll get into some fights hopefully next segment, but for this time, we'll take a break. But remember, go to showmemissouri.com. That's Missouri like it's supposed to be said, MISSOURH. We went to Iron County this week and saw the Battle of Pilot Knob. Ben Ellis and everybody there at the Battle of Pilot Knob historic site. The city slickers will call it Fort Davidson, but it's the Battle of Pilot Knob. Hear all about it with Commissioner Skaggs' home county, actually, of Brett Dinkins. Check it out, showmemissouri.com. We'll be right back after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Looking to get quality insurance at a price you can afford? Now you can, thanks to CFM Insurance. Select from our broad range of farm, home, and rental property coverage. Find an agent right in your local area, as CFM is represented by a network of 200 independent agencies throughout Missouri. For personal and dependable service from a company with a history of insuring the families of Missouri that dates back to 1869, visit WeInsureMissouri.com and find an agent near you today.
We just finished up this week's show, and I appreciate a second to tell you about a new thing we're doing. I'm a history buff, like I know a lot of you are if you watch the show. We're doing a thing of the history of Missouri. We're going to do it one county at a time. We call it Show Me Missouri. We're going to travel to all 114 counties of the state. We'll have a member of the Farm Bureau, county elected officials, some of your state legislators you see here on the show. We're going to talk about the history, what's happening now in the county, and how the two are interconnected. It's a passion project of mine. If you like history, I hope you'll get involved. Follow us, go to MissouriTimes.com. You can see it. We'll probably branch it off into on social media at some point. But you've been so good to us at the Missouri Times, the show, different papers. This is a passion project that I hope you'll enjoy. It's called Show Me Missouri, the history of Missouri, one county at a time. The first county was Polk County. We had a great time. And we hope you'll go to MissouriTimes.com, find a little bit about it. And if you like the history of the state, I hope you'll enjoy it. Thanks a lot.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to our final edition of the year of This Week in Missouri Politics. Scott Dieckhaus, Jane Dueker, Jeff Smith, and Brittany Robins. Brittany, this week I think we all thought this was happening. There were rumors of it, but I think Scott Sifton's actually making it very clear to people around the state he intends to run for governor. I think he was probably going to have the conviction to do it whether Claire McCaskill was or not, but with her out, he is probably the person that folks are going to key on as the person actively seeking it. If you're a Missouri Democrat, what does Scott Sifton do for you?
Sure. Well, I think it's about time that he stepped up and showed that kind of leadership if he's serious. Senator Sifton has won that Senate seat now twice. One in each
swing seat.
Yeah, it's one of the most competitive Senate seats in the state, and in a year that was not great for Democrats.
True.
So I think that he's proven that he knows how to win. He will win. And he's resilient. And I think he's an excellent candidate right now to have for governor in Missouri.
I thought Scott Sifton got it. I mean, you could tell he got it by, keep in mind, I thought it was an interesting thing. There was a primary where he was the pro-choice candidate against Sue Shamel for that seat, and she was the pro-life candidate. Normally in St. Louis County, South County, the pro-life candidate would always win that. He won that, the first really pro-choice candidate to win one of those competitive primaries. Then I watched his commercials this past cycle when he won re-election in 2014. It was every commercial, whether talking about healthcare or not, the final shot was him talking to cops. I was like, okay, he gets it.
Yeah, Scott's very savvy. He's tireless. He's definitely going to work as hard as anybody out there. I suspect there'll probably be other candidates who come into the mix. But you know,
you ever heard of Russ Carnahan?
and he's out there talking about it, and I know he's making calls as well. But I think, you know, the fact is, Mike Parson's going to be hard to beat. I don't know that I've seen a politician, I'm a student of this stuff, I watch different states around the country. I'm not sure I've seen someone have a 6-month honeymoon. You know, when they've come into office, you know, it's been a long.
It was a low bar. So.
Maybe you get a longer honeymoon if if the woman had a bad ex-husband, right? The honeymoon might last a little longer. But what about if you're? I think the key thing, if you're looking what could impact things now that Claire McCaskill's not running, is what if Trump does get in trouble? We've heard this. If you're if you're my dad, you don't want to hear any of this. You don't care what he could have been photographed shooting Hoffa. You wouldn't care. But I think what if Trump actually does get proven? Not that he's paying off porn stars, but real trouble. Does that change anything?
Certainly, if you have a president who's in the mid-30s or even lower than that, and he's, obviously the last few weeks have not been good for him. You see people like Nick Ayers, turning down the opportunity to be his chief of staff. Look, when Nick Ayers thinks you're too corrupt to go to work for, you're in real trouble.
Yeah,
So,
and I do think that has a huge difference, because I think that right now Governor Parson has been able to sort of lead from the middle and lead and not get too far either way. And I think that people were exhausted, and I think they're going to be exhausted after this Trump fiasco. And I do think it's going very badly and going to get worse. If that happens, I think that gives Governor Parson the freedom to not have to take a hard turn to the right, which I think is actually better for the state. And I think, so I think it'll make it harder.
If you're Scott Simpson and you're sitting back with a large war chest, the largest war chest really of anybody we're talking about running, including the governor as of now. I mean, if you see other times where someone come from the state Senate to make a run, we saw some Democratic candidates around the nation come from state Senate platforms to run very close race. In Kansas, I believe the governor there might have been a former state senator. I think it's an interesting play if Trump does sink some popularity from a legitimately bad thing where even a Republican says, okay, that's bad. Maybe I think Scott Simpson, by being the first one that says, I'm in, whoever else is in, I'll see you out there. It might be the gutsy move that earns him a lot of real credibility.
He's stepping up. I mean, and you get credit for stepping up. Everybody's sort of like fringing a little bit, but he said, I'm in. And I think that does matter. And I think that a lot of times people have written off candidates. Bob Holden was written off. Oh yeah, he's, no way. Well, I mean, he worked it and he crossed the finish line. You never know. Yeah. So that kind of leadership, I think.
He's a good fundraiser, like Bob Holden was.
Exactly. And he's got a lot of the fundamentals. And so other people are going to have that challenge, but he's going to have the challenge in dealing with, somebody who's on a honeymoon. And when is that honeymoon going to end? And how is it going to end? And can he tie Governor Parson to that chaos?
Oh, I would say with a lot of the mainstream media, it'll end about the time that there's a regular Democrat running against them, right? I mean, but if there's one thing I think people aren't seeing. This whole session coming up is going to talk about going after lawyers, changing the laws in relation to trial lawyers. It's going to, every time they call a vote.
Taking a break from women? Sorry.
Oh my gosh. I'm not taking a break from them. So as they go through, the votes will be in the House. Every time they call the roll, they'll vote them out of the House. This all falls to Scott Simpson in the Senate.
It does. Yes. And I think Scott deserves credit for jumping out early. I always appreciate when candidates know what they want to do. They jump out early, they put themselves out there, and they start to build the apparatus that it takes to win a statewide office. I do think, though, that looking at Trump, looking at Governor Parson, looking at Parson's popularity, looking at how smart they have been, how open and honest they have been, I don't know that it matters who the Democrat is, especially now that Claire McCaskill's out of the way. I just see Mike Parson as really kind of an unbeatable folksy. He's your grandpa, he's your neighbor, he's that kind of candidate, and I think that he can even, if anything does happen with Trump or whatever, I think he can differentiate. Listen,
that I wonder about. That to me is more dangerous.
I don't think so. I think that most people have appreciated his approach. I think he's reached out to corners of the party that maybe he didn't have the best relationships in. And I think that he's stabilized those relationships. I think he's done a phenomenal job.
So to Scott's point, I happened to be in Bolivar last week in Governor Parson's hometown. I was speaking to a group of residents at a low-income housing property, and I noted that Governor Parson had been very supportive of low-income housing around the state, and immediately an older woman said, who? You mean Mike? He said, I just talked to him at the grocery last week. So that's the kind, I think it's a tribute to
the Farm Bureau guy down there told me the same thing.
He's connecting with people, and that is great.
Well, Jay Dueker, on the history of the show, you have always been very good to give predictions, even right in the face of common sense. You always predict the Democrats are going to get slaughtered, then they have the election, and me and Steelman always predict the Democrats are going to get slaughtered, means to look good. Give me a prediction for the next 2 years. Look into the crystal ball.
Well, I do think Trump is in big trouble. I think Nick
Now,
Ayers.
I define this. Legitimately, something's going to come up.
no,
But even
yeah.
Scott Dieckhaus, who is a rational person, is going to say, okay, that's bad.
Yeah, no,
that level.
I think, the porn star stuff has been fished out to the Southern District of New York. That's not Mueller. That's a whole nother sideshow. I think there is going to be legitimate trouble, and I think there's going to be a tipping point when actually lawmakers and people start falling off. And Nick Ayers saw the writing on the wall. I mean, there's no way he's not going to take that job if unless there's something really bad coming.
I'll give you a prediction. I think Nicole Galloway, who, whether she likes it, whether anybody wants to admit it, is in charge of redistricting. Even if she's not, she is. I don't think she's going to destroy the maps as the way some people have predicted. I think she's going to do a fair job. I don't think she's going to eviscerate minority districts. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to do what some liberals want. I think she'll do a better job than people think at it.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to come in as radically as people are maybe suspecting. However, I do not envy that responsibility.
She has to eviscerate
That
minority
is-
districts, or she's not following the language that was just put into our Constitution.
Well, and
My
the problem
son-in-law
is-
said she's not going to do it. So.
Well, and the problem is, too, that she's going to get sued no matter what. And if
Right.
you're a Republican and she hasn't eviscerated and she hasn't made those Democratic seats in the urban areas competitive, then they're going to sue, and they're going to a United States Supreme Court that doesn't believe in the Voting Rights Act.
Give me a prediction.
About anything or about
Anything,
redistricting?
yeah. Goldschmidt wins the MVP. I'll go there.
A prediction. I think we'll have a crowded primary for governor on the Democratic side.
Who wins
Yes. I'm not sure because I don't think we know who the field is yet, but my prediction would be that someone who none of us are even contemplating here on the show today will enter that race. Might be a business person, might be...
Barry Aycock type. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Prediction.
I'll give two. I think the legislature and the governor work so well together that people are shocked. And I think Elijah Harr needs to put Cedric the Entertainer in the Hall of Fame as Missourians.
Well, Harley Ray should be in the Hall of Fame. Who
That's
be
a good one.
prediction?
So that was going to be one of my predictions, is that the honeymoon that we're seeing with Governor Parsons sort of continues into the state legislature next week, and next session, and it'll be progress and collaboration and bills moving like we haven't seen in some time.
Well, they're predicting going to kick us off the air if we don't wrap up. So with a minute left, who won the week?
I think Jay Ashcroft won the week.
Yeah.
I think...
See that?
Yeah, Chris Koster told me when I entered the Senate, he said, if you want to be somebody in this place, you got to find someone bigger than you and punch him in the mouth. And I think Jay Ashcroft did that this week.
Yeah, powerful.
Who won the week?
Angela Silvey, she filed to run for municipal judge in Jefferson City, so hats off to her.
Who won the week?
Claire McCaskill. I think that, doing this now, allowing people the time to react and deal with, otherwise there would have been rumors. She quelled all that. She will be a big part of our political fabric, but it's good that she allows the page to be turned so people can start preparing.
Who won the week?
Governor Parson. He won the year. I mean, he just turned the page and set Missouri back on the right track.
I'm going to say Congresswoman Ann Wagner here in St. Louis. She's making the point that if Republicans don't start winning the votes of suburban women, they will be in the minority for a very long time. I want to thank all of you, from the Faughn family to your family, for watching us this year. It's been a heck of a year in Missouri politics, maybe the most eventful in 100 years. Appreciate all of you, but I think every fair-minded Missourian who loves the state knows she's in better hands than she was a year ago. So here's to all of you. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in 2019.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.